Fog rises early in the mountain village of Vicorin, pouring like milk over the pine-covered spines and dissolving against shutters still latched from the night winds. On most mornings, the only sounds are those of sled runners rasping on packed snow, or goats knocking the last frost from the meadow grass, or the rasp of a saw in the carpenter's yard. But on mornings when the air is perfectly clear and every stone path carries a memory of footsteps, a deeper music can roll down from the hidden summits, the sound of the forgiving bells. No one has ever seen them. They are said to hang somewhere, beyond the avalanche gullies, hammered from meteoric iron in the time before Vicorin had a name. According to village lore, they toll only when a human heart unclenches, when someone chooses mercy instead of revenge, and their echo loosens knots that have choked bloodlines for centuries. Old people insist the bells rang more often long ago, when life was simpler and grudges were small. Now the gaps between tolling stretch wider than childhood itself. Parents kneel by cribs telling newborns, "May you hear the bells in your lifetime," the same way they wish their child steady harvests or safe passage through the pass of crows. The prophecy is half blessing, half rebuke, because the only reason the bells fall silent is that forgiveness does. And in Vicorin, there are more reasons to stay angry than there are stars visible in the winter sky. The bitterest feud burns between the Morlake family on the western slope and the Zelenkos on the eastern terraces. Nobody can recite exactly how it began. Some claim a Morzuk goat trampled a Zelenko herb garden in the reign of Queen Palandra. Others whisper of a courtyard duel gone wrong, or an unpaid dowry that left feelings raw. Over the decades, the reason mattered less than the continuation. Shutters slammed, plows were sabotaged, and every Yule bonfire turned into a contest of who could toast louder insults. Children were taught surnames the way soldiers learn enemies' banners. If you were a Morzuk, you crossed yourself when a Zelenko shadow passed. And a Zelenko child learned to spit twice when the Morzuk's mill bell clanged at dusk. At 16, Mara Morzuk found those rituals exhausting in a way she rarely confessed. She liked to sneak out at dawn and watch valley mist swirl into columnar shapes, hoping the sight would rinse old stories from her blood. Her older brothers spoke of vengeance as though it were bread, a daily sustenance, yet Mara felt it coat her tongue like ashes. The only Zelenko she ever met face-to-face was Luka, a lanky boy who delivered river trout to the market for his aunt. They traded words about weather, about the taste of dried peaches, about the ridiculousness of the traveling magician last autumn who pretended to levitate a goat. They never mentioned surnames. It was as though they were borrowing other lives for 5-minute intervals behind the Cooper's sheds. The day the story opens, Mara is edging through the spruce corridor that climbs toward the old watchtower above the village. She carries a leather sketchbook because she has discovered that drawing cliffs helps her memorize their silent language. High ridges speak in snow curls and talus patterns, telling who among them might break loose in spring. That day, she hears a second set of boots crunching. It is Luca, cheeks flushed from exertion, holding a line of trout on a reed string. Neither pretends surprise. Meetings have become habit, though any adult who caught them talking would reel in scandal like a net full of eels. They perch on a flat boulder, warmed by the thin sun. Below, Vichorin resembles a handful of embers in a charcoal tray. Red roofs, black chimneys, gray lanes. Conversation startles out like sparrows. Mara explains perspective tricks in charcoal. Luca describes the way trout know to angle themselves in current so they appear still while water roars around them. They exchange laughter, shy but fierce, the kind that grows teeth only when one must say goodbye. Eventually, they descend opposite paths, but Mara's steps wobble because she carries a feeling too large for her ribs. She has glimpsed a life outside Feud, and it shimmers like a hidden alpine lake untouched by wind. That shimmer collapses 3 evenings later when a Mortiek wagon is found shattered outside the Zelenko wine cellar, casks broken, red lake pooling in the dust. The accident, if it is an accident, fans old embers into flame. Accusations ricochet across taverns. Luka's uncle, Vadim, swears he saw Morsheks sneaking near the cellar first. Mara's eldest brother, Rothko, roars that the Zelenkos must have pushed the wagon downhill to smash the vintage deliberately. Windows break. Two elders scuffle during evening prayers, overturning the candle table so wax congeals on the flagstones like spilled marrow. In the ferment of outrage, nobody listens for bells. Ears vibrate with anger's own clamor. Village council summons both families to the stone hall with its moldy tapestries. Elder Sylvia, white braided and stooped like a birch bowed by snow, presides. She reminds them that the mountain kills without prejudice. Avalanches do not ask surnames, but her voice is reeds against thunder. The council imposes a fine on both houses until the culprit is named. That night, each clan meets separately, clenching fists around guilt and suspicion. Luka's cousin swears she saw Rothko Mortiek near the cellar door. Rothko swears he was sharpening scythes miles away. All evidence is smoke. Truth is whatever story one repeats through gritted teeth. In private, Luka scratches a message on birch bark asking to meet Mara by the old watchtower at dawn. He cannot bear watching distrust accumulate like black ice between them. Mara receives the message via Market Boy and hugs it to her chest. Yet she feels the noose of communal rage tightening. If she is caught sneaking toward a Zelenko, she risks more than harsh words. Still, pre-dawn stars give her courage, and she climbs. They greet each other with faces sick from sleeplessness. Luka's voice trembles when he says, "We could sort this out together." He confides that he suspects the wagon rolled by wind or rotten brake rather than malice. Mara admits that her brother might fabricate alibis to keep pride intact. Neither wants to supply a confession that would ruin kin, yet each yearns for silence to end. They craft a wild plan, uncover the wagon's broken axle for proof of decay, present evidence to the council, let blame shift from human hands to chance. It is naive, maybe impossible, but the idea shines enough to thaw the mountain chill around them. They descend toward the ruins of the wagon, now roped off by council decree. At the perimeter, Luka's younger brother, Milan, patrols with a sling. When he spots Mara, outrage flashes brighter than sun on glacier. He calls her witch and traitor. Luka steps between them, but Milan's shout has already alerted a pair of Morchi-like cousins lurking nearby. Words become fists. Mara tries to drag Luka away, yet he refuses to strike family. In the scuffle, Milan's elbow connects with Mara's cheek. Pain blooms electric. Rothko appears, hefting an oaken staff, bellowing for blood. Luka pulls Mara behind a hayrack as stones fly. The world shrinks to breath and panic until Mara screams a word no one expects. "Enough!" Her voice slices the quarrel like sleet across a campfire. For a heartbeat, fighters freeze. Then Rothko growls, "Go home, sister!" And Milan spits blood-tinged saliva, but they disperse because smelling salts of alarm have replaced adrenaline. Luka's eyes shimmer with apology. They part again, but the tiny seam inside Mara's mind, stitched tight by upbringing, has torn wider. She sees how swiftly feud logic drags even the gentle into brutality. The bells, she realizes, have not failed the village. The village has failed the bells. Days pass, with tension wound taut as clock springs. Mara's cheek yellows to green, a bruise she can't hide. Her mother weeps. Her father says, the Zelenkos must pay. Each night, Mara lies awake, hearing hypothetical versions of the wagon crash repeating like thunder in a canyon. She thinks of the first mapmakers who believed monsters lurked where knowledge ended. In Vikorin, monsters are grudges given name. One midnight, as snow begins its silent descent, Mara rises, dresses in wool and leather, and creeps through the barn to the tool wall. She lifts the long-handled hammer used to fix plowshares and stealthily leaves the homestead. She heads for the Trader's Pass, a narrow gap leading to the ridges where no villager ventures except shepherds desperate for summer grass. Legend claims the forgiving bells hang above that pass, mounted on natural stone arches like ribs of a long-dead god. Mara's plan is ridiculous. She will climb until she finds them, drag the hammer across their surface, coax a toll that forces ears open. She tells herself she is not forgiving yet. She is only borrowing the bell's authority to coerce truth. But the mountain, ancient instructor, will teach her other lessons. The ascent is vicious, snow ghosts swirl, hiding crevasses. At dawn, the eastern sky ignites rose and gold, turning every icicle into molten glass. Physically spent, Mara reaches a plateau veined with wind-carved pillars. In the center stands an arch of black stone thicker than a barn beam. Suspended from iron vines is a bell the height of a tall man, pitted like old armor. Its surface bears runes eroded to freckles, but one thing stuns her. There is no clapper inside, only emptiness. She leans her forehead against the frozen metal, understanding instantly why no hammering mortal hand can summon its voice. The bell was never designed to be struck from without. It rings from within, moved by vibrations that begin in the human chest. Mara feels ridiculous, alone, and farther from certainty than when she left home. Wind slices her bruise, tears prick. She recalls Luca's rain-green eyes, her mother's shaking hands, Rothko's rage masking fear. Something inside her softens, not toward one side but toward all of them, the whole flawed lineage struggling through thin air. A sentence blooms inside her skull, simple as meltwater. I forgive them, and I ask to be forgiven. She does not know who exactly she addresses. Luca? Milan? Rothko? Herself? The nameless ancestor who first closed a fist? But the words vibrate in Mara. They feel like truth. A low resonance rolls through the plateau, subtle as thunder, still miles away. Snow grains dance from ledges. Mara sucks breath, heart slamming. The bell above her remains motionless, yet a voice like sunrise spreads, deep and bright, pouring across ridges and spilling into valleys. It is not loud, it is vast. A single peal, then another, each note sliding under the skin, rearranging heat and cold inside every listener. Down in Vacoran, goats halt mid-chew, elders straighten arthritic backs, infants gurgle quiet, Smith hammers pause mid-stroke, clattering sparks on the cold anvil. No one mistakes the sound. The forgiving bells are ringing for the first time in 31 years. Mara sinks to her knees as reverberations fade into hush. She feels lighter, as though the bruise on her cheek has drained through the soles of her boots. She limps back along the ridge path. When she emerges onto the main sled track at noon, she finds the village in strange stillness. People stand in circles not to plot revenge, but to ask timidly, "Did you feel it too? Did something loosen?" Faces, usually strapped by suspicion, are soft. Astonished. Children tug sleeves, asking what forgiveness tastes like. Mara, cheeks windburned, hair crusted with frost, walks through them like someone returning from the stars. At her doorway, Rothko blocks entrance, eyes rimmed red. Wordless, he reaches a trembling hand to her face, brushing the fading bruise, then steps aside. Her mother holds her so fiercely, ribs creak. Around the hearth, the family gathers. Rothko begins. While the bells rang, he watched resentment inside him crack. He confesses that he had indeed been near the wine cellar, but only to meet a clandestine card partner, ashamed to tell father he gambled. When the wagon careered downhill, he panicked and fled. Contrition shreds his voice. Mara listens, heart churning, yet the bell's echo still dwells in her bloodstream, and she forgives him before realizing she is speaking words aloud. Meanwhile, across the terraces, Luca faces his household, admitting he shouted false witness against more checks because he feared being forbidden from market trips where he might see Mara. He bows his head, pulse hammering. Aunt Nada, keeper of the family ledger of grievances, snaps the brittle parchment shut. She says, "If the mountain has absolved, who am I to keep tally?" Her words tumble others, cousins, uncles, even dour Uncle Vadim release smaller wrongs like birds from a wicker cage. By dusk, members of both clans converge in the square, wary but curious. Elder Sylvia welcomes them beneath the cracked sundial. There are no speeches, only nods and tears. Bread is broken, wine shared from the surviving casks. Someone brings a fiddle. Children chase chicken feathers swirling in lamplight. The council meets again, this time in laughter-echoed chamber. Fines are rescinded. Instead, they draft a new festival, the Day of Resounding, to be held each spring equinox, celebrating moments when people choose pardon over pride. The first decree: Morcheks and Zelenkos will jointly rebuild the wrecked wagon and auction its wine to fund a public library so future generations may read stories wider than feud. Rothko volunteers carpentry. Luca offers fish profits. Mara promises to paint murals on the library walls, landscapes where every cliff curls into a gentle slope. Late that night, Mara and Luca climb to the watchtower again. The village below flickers with torches and improbable singing, a lullaby both families happen to share, but never before dared to sing together. The moon floats huge above frost-silvered peaks. Mara says, I thought I needed to make the bell sound, but it was never silent. We were. Luca smiles, then chuckles, the laugh of someone no longer armoring each word. They clasp hands, simple, unhidden. Somewhere far above, beyond cloud bands, iron lips hang still, yet the universe around them hums with an aftertone, as though every particle of rock has memorized the music. Years later, Vichorin becomes famous, not for feuds, but for letters of reconciliation carved into communal benches. Travelers arrive to ask about the great unseen bells. Children lead them to the library, pointing at murals of wolves curling beside lambs, of broken wheels sprouting flowers through spokes. They tell a legend of a girl who climbed above the tree line with nothing but a hammer and came back with something louder than noise. If visitors stay long enough, they might hear a distant chord at dusk, the bells responding to some quiet apology uttered by a stranger on the far side of the path. But villagers learn not to wait for that proof. They understand now. The sound is never the cause, it is the mirror. Forgiveness rings first inside, and the mountain merely answers.